Okay guys, this is the last lesson on musical notation scores. This is part 4. Obviously there are 3 previous parts to this, so if you haven't watched those, please do. As usual, I will link the previous ones in the description below, so please do check those out, as they will be the fundamental building blocks as to this lesson. I'm going to do a quick recap over what we've done in our previous 3, and then we'll get on to this lesson. At the end of this lesson, I have got a couple of activities for you guys to do, just to help solidify the teachings of this lesson. I have noticed that I do talk really fast, and there is a lot of information being given in these videos, so please do feel free to pause when you need to, make any notes as you go along, and obviously you can rewatch the videos and go back to look over them anytime you feel is necessary. They will be public, you can use them whenever. So yeah. In our first lesson, as I have mentioned in all of my other videos, we looked at what is notation in score. By now, I'm sure I've repeated it enough for you guys to remember, but just in case you haven't seen those videos yet, notation is anything that visually represents music being played, and scores are a type of notation. We also had a quick look at the brief history of musical notation. I know that that was a lot of information to receive in the short amount of time, so if you do need a recap of that, do go watch lesson part 1. Yeah, so we had a look at the first ever findings of musical notation, 1025, when notation was a 4-line stave, and then we looked into how it developed up until the 17th century to the notation that we know today. In lesson 2, we had a look at what notation does and how it helps, basically being something that allows musicians playing the instruments to play together and gives them instructions and information on how to play. And like we've said, scores are a version of that, and the most common form of it. I then gave you an example of the same song but in 2 separate forms of scoring, one being a piano and one being a guitar. We then had a look in our last part 2 types of notations. We went over 4 of them, one being the generic kind of idea of what notation is, what we have today, so general piano scores, etc., and 3 others that aren't generally used but are still ones that could be helpful for you guys in the future if you'd like to use them. If you want a more in-depth description of each of them, that is in the previous lesson, lesson 3, and these were just some examples of each of those. The explanation is there if you wish. So today we are actually giving you and looking into pitch and rhythm. So this is just a basic introduction. As I've said before, this is year 8, Key Stage 3, based on a curriculum. So we are going to be looking at pitch and rhythm. So as you can see, I've just popped a little picture there for pitch. So as you can see, these are all of the notes that you would get on a 5-stage piece of scoring. So I just wanted to help you learn them. So as you can see, the first part is the notes in between each line, but there are also notes on each line. You can obviously copy this down somewhere, you can print versions off. Having them can sometimes really help with understanding sheet music and scoring. Please don't feel too stressed if you don't get this right away. It is very difficult learning. Like I said, you can always just have a note with you, and you can get sheet music and write the letters underneath if that helps you follow it better when playing. But yeah, so for the notes in between every line, simply remembering face is the notes, so F-A-C-E are the notes between the lines going up. So face helps you remember those. However, it is slightly harder to remember the notes on the line. There are many versions of remembering it. It's whatever really works for you guys. one that's used quite commonly is "Every good boy deserves football," or things like that. This will be part of an activity very, very shortly, so I wouldn't worry too much, but like I said, there are many different versions of how to use it. It's just simply trying to come up with something that will help you remember the notes on the line, as well as using the word face to remember the notes between the lines. Just so you know, there are notes that go below those lines and there are notes that go above those lines. We won't be looking at those today. You can obviously look into those more if you wish, but currently it won't be necessary. As I just want you to know the basic scale for today. Just underneath that, rhythm. So the symbols, as we've been referring to them in previous lessons, are notes or rests. I have just popped a little chart there for your rhythm to understand the notes. We're not looking at rests today. For the notes, each version of a note, the way it's drawn, the way it looks, is representative of the length you hold it, basically. So as you can see, that top one, this literally just looks like a little circle. It's a whole note, which means that it lasts for 4 beats. So if you had 4 beats in a bar, you would hold it for the whole bar. Then we have got a minim, which basically looks like the first one with a little tail above it. That is half a whole beat, so that will only last for 2 beats of the bar. Obviously, if you had 2 minims, that would then be 4. After that, we have got a crotchet, which looks a little bit like a minim but coloured in. That will only last 1 beat. Semiquavers look like crotchets connected. They also, both of those notes will be played within 1 beat. And then we have a set of semiquavers, which means that there are 2 sets of semiquavers. All 4 would be equivalent to 1 beat. I understand if that's quite confusing. This is your first introduction to it. Feel free to copy those down, or if there are other charts that you find more useful to help you remember it, go for it. Like I said, this is just an introduction, so don't feel like you have to know this all off by heart straight away. You can always come back to this video and look at it in more detail in the future, or you could note it down now, or you can find pictures. There is multiple different sources out there that may help you. This is just the starting little stepping stones for you guys. But yeah, that's the basics of what I feel you need to know for the end of your notation and scores lesson. This could have been very confusing because it has been in 4 parts, and that is completely understandable. Like I always say, I will link the other previous videos in the description below. So just a quick recap before I give you your activities. Your activities will be based on this part of the lesson, so the introduction to pitch and rhythm, but we'll just do a quick recap of everything that you've learned in the previous parts, if you don't wish to watch the other videos, but I would recommend it if you want it in more detail. And then I shall give you your activities. I know that this has been a lot of information, so please don't worry if you don't understand it straight away. Like I said, these are public. You can rewatch them as much as you need, use them in any way that can help. And let's go back to it then. So what we're gonna do, like I said, notation is a visual representation of music. Like I said, I'm just cramming this all down just into basic little pieces. The actual lesson on it will give you all of the necessary information around it. Scores are a type of notation. We tend to see scoring in music a lot, be it through practical work, online. It tends to be the way we read music. The history, just as a basic overview, in 1400 BC there was some symbols that have been linked to instrument notation, found in Iraq. Then in 1025 a monk started using nemus to show how choral singers can read and notate music. Really sorry if I've pronounced that incorrectly. It's a difficult word for me, so sorry about that. And then, of course, through time and the development in the 17th century, we started to see the notation that we know of today. After that, we had a lesson in part 2 that we looked at how notations and scores work, which is just a basic overview of what notations and scoring give you. So kind of like the fact that scoring and the information that are given as part of notation is really, really helpful for musicians to help them play. Orchestral pieces are a great way of showing how sheet music is given to all of them and they're able to play together. There are different forms of notation, but they will have varying amounts of information on them. Scores tend to also be used as documentation of the written work, so that is also a great thing to be including. And continuing forward, I gave you some examples. These 2 examples are for the song Let It Be. The first one being piano and the second one being guitar. Both of them forms of notation, both of them forms of sheet music, however have varying different amounts of information based on the instrument that is being played. Then the lesson after that, we looked at types of notation and scoring. As I said earlier, we had the modern day scoring, which is what we looked into more depth today. So if you watched the previous video and were worried about reading sheet music, that's what today's video was for. And then, as I said, Nemeuse is for the monk that started notation in 1025. Dodeca was a visual representation using bars on a 4-line stave, which we also spoke about in that lesson, and fluid music notation, which was a instrument-specific form of notation that I didn't want you guys to worry about at all, just wanted to let you know. And then I gave you some examples of the different forms of notation and what they look like. As you can see, the one directly underneath the title is the one that we looked at today, also showing a version of that scale which includes bass notes. Okay, and then obviously today's. So just remember that the notes between the lines spell out face, and the notes on the line, I use Every Good Boy Deserves Football, but you can always change it, make it anything that helps you remember. Don't worry about it, so long it's helping you. You don't have to worry about everybody else. And as you went over, that first one that looks like a circle is a whole note that lasts for 4 beats. Minims last for 2, crotchets for 1, set of quavers 1, and set of semi-quavers 1. So let's get on to introducing your activities. So your first activity I want to give you is to just try coming up with your own acronym to remember the notes on a stave. So it can be absolutely anything that helps you remember. Just want you to make a little note of it. What is your acronym? What helps you? Don't stress too much. It's absolutely anything. It could be something that is funny, something that is got significance, anything that helps you remember as a student. That's all you need to worry about. Like I said, if you want to pause this at this point so that you can see the activities, that is absolutely fine. Your second activity, as I've put here, is try filling out the piece of music on the next slide. So what I've done is you have got this is a piece of Hey Soul Sister. I just want you to go through it and underneath or above each of the letters, just write the note that it is, each of the notes, sorry, and write the letter of the note that it is, and just like using the pitch thing on the previous couple of slides, just use that and try and fill out what each of the notes are. Like I said, pause this there if you really want to use that, or obviously you can find some sheet music and draw it out yourself. That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for sitting through all 4 parts of this lesson, and I shall see you guys soon.